The Statehouse for Colorado sits in the center of downtown Denver. Its golden dome gleams in the light and it towers over many buildings around it. I landed an internship in the state capitol building working with an historian setting up several displays in what they call the attic. It was a fun job for the summer and tied into my degree, so I didn't mind working it, but it did occasionally have me there at odd hours. One time I was working late and carrying some pictures to be put up on the walls, and I could swear out of nowhere I heard the sound of galloping horses and then men yelling. This was followed by some gunshots, but they sounded far away. This threw me a little, and I nearly dropped the large photographs I had in my hands. As quickly as it started, it stopped. I found this incredibly strange because we were in the middle of a very large urban city, and there were no horses or crazy gunmen anywhere near the center of downtown Denver. I was moving through the Statehouse, and then I heard a groaning sound, and I swear I could see a shape moving down one of the marble hallways, which was heading my way. Combined with what I'd just gone through, this sent a chill up my spine, and I could swear the hairs on my arms rose. The shape moved toward me, and I slowly backed away, eventually running up some stairs into a different corridor. I rounded a corner, and then I was greeted by a truly grisly sight. There was a head of a person on a pike just sitting there a few feet from me. And this time I did drop the photos, and they clattered to the ground. I backed up and slammed into a wall, where I was frozen for a moment. I started looking for another way out, hoping to slide down another hallway. And just as I saw my escape, I looked back, and then I found the hallway was empty again. No head on a pike. No strange shapes. It was quiet as a church in there. It took me several seconds to regain my composure, but I gathered the photographs and headed back toward the attic, where the museum was. I helped the curator put the exhibit together. Somehow they read that I was rattled. So I asked a couple questions about gunfights and heads on pikes. The curator chuckled and went on to explain to me about the bloody Espinosas, who were gold prospectors back in the 1860s during the Colorado Gold Rush. They were there early, but many others arrived, and they became angry at people encroaching upon their gold claim. It was said they turned to murder to thin out the other gold prospectors and to protect their lands. Some say they killed between 10 and 30 people before they were finally caught. They were killed in a bloody shootout, and it is rumored that their heads were stored at the Statehouse in the treasurer's office until they could be finally disposed of. Some say they were burnt in the furnace, and some say they were lost in the building, in some unknown storage closet. A chill went through my whole body after hearing these stories. When that internship was up, I was happy not to go back in the Statehouse for a long, long time. You ever catch movement out of the corner of your eye and think there's something or somebody just out of your line of sight that may be watching you? This was one of those times where whatever I was seeing proved to be truly frightening. Denver has a beautiful train station in its downtown. It's called Union Station and has become a center of attention for the area. Today it has many restaurants and attractions inside the lovingly restored building. I was walking the grounds around the station, checking out incoming trains and people going here and there. I'd always loved the idea of train travel, so this was fun for me. As I was walking around the train platforms, I kept feeling like somebody was watching me. As I moved, I would catch some kind of thing moving just out of my line of sight, and it would stop and then quickly spin. But then there was nothing there. This happened several times as I walked to the platform with the arriving trains. It was a little unnerving, but I just wrote it off as me probably drinking too much caffeine that day. I decided it was time to go inside the Union Station and check out some of the restaurants. I stepped inside and looked around, and it was hard to decide which place I would like to get a bite to eat, so I wandered down the aisles checking out the different menus. But then the same thing kept happening. A dark shape just out of my perception was standing, staring at me. But when I would spin to see it, it disappeared. I forgot about my need for something to eat, thought I should try to find someplace else to go take care of my hunger. I looked toward the exit, and there was the dark shape. It hovered there, and it stared at me, and I felt my heart go cold. I was about to run when it turned and just passed right through the door without opening it. I was dumbstruck for a moment, and then I quickly rushed after it for some crazy reason. I rushed outside onto the train platform, and I saw the shape near one of the trains, and then it faded away again. Then I heard a scream of somebody suffering immense amount of pain, and I rushed over the tracks, but I found them empty. Nobody else seemed to be experiencing the visual and auditory apparitions that I was seeing and hearing. I felt a wave of cold hit me, and a hand grabbed my stomach. And it was a combination of burning and freezing that centered in my gut. I knew it was fear that was trying to take over me. My head went a little light, and my heart began to beat rapidly. I got very woozy, and I almost collapsed right there on the spot. But eventually the sensations faded, and I was able to keep myself upright. I looked down the tracks, and I saw the shape hovering there, and I could swear it was looking directly at me. Then, just like every time before, it dissolved into nothingness. Eventually I walked away, and as I was passing back through the building, I saw an old timer there, and he gave me an odd look. I knew I had to ask him about anything strange that had happened at the Union Station. He said he'd seen the same shape many years ago, and had heard about a man who'd been a little tipsy, who'd been staggering through the station looking for his lost ticket. And then he stumbled out of the building and onto the tracks just as the train arrived. It hit him full force, and it took many hours to get the pieces of his body and the blood off the tracks. I thanked the man for his grisly story and left the building. All I could think about was this poor man is doomed to wander the station looking for his lost ticket. I was visiting Denver for the first time, and when I'm in a capital city, I always like to visit the Statehouse to see the kind of history the building holds. So this took me to downtown Denver, and I took in the beautiful gold-domed building, and then promptly stepped inside to check out the beautiful architecture. Somehow I'd arrived between tours, so I was left to my own devices to wander the building and see what kind of information I could find. As I meandered around, I thought I heard footsteps following me. But when I turned around to see if anybody was there, I just found an empty hallway. But then I was greeted by a wave of cold air that chilled me to my core. At first I thought it was just the AC system turning on, and it was cranked just a little too high, so I wrote it off as some natural occurrence. I continued my self-guided tour of the building. I checked out some of the hallways, and then I heard the footsteps again. And this time I kept moving a little bit, trying to ignore it, but it kept coming back. Finally, I turned around, and I saw a woman in white at the end of the hall. She was transparent. She seemed to be just floating there, taking me in, evaluating me. I have to admit I was scared and fascinated at the same time. I just watched her there, but then she began floating toward me. A sense of fear and danger overtook me. As she got closer, I was forced to make a hasty retreat, and I ran down another hallway. This took me to an open door which led down some stairs into a tunnel. And I kind of knew I was probably in an unauthorized area, but I kept going because I heard the footsteps following me. I landed in a well-kept steam tunnel that seemed to go in several directions. And I looked, and I saw the woman in white again. Floating, this time she held her ground. But then the same blast of cold air hit me again, and the hallway was filled with ghostly whispers, echoing off the hard stone walls. This forced me to retreat for a second time, and I ran back up the stairs. This time I could see the exterior exit, which I took as fast as I could. Once outside in the full sun, I could regain my composure, and I looked at the building. I wondered, who was this woman? Why was she there? What did she want? These questions, I fear, will never have answers. I did learn one thing. I didn't want to go back in that building again and encounter the woman in white.